What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to go over the top 10 surprising sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. So before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I just started putting out videos on books that are trending up and down, but I do like making these ones as well because these are those surprising sales that happen each week. And if you're not familiar with this video, if you're new to the channel, these are videos where I watch the weekly Heritage comic auction. I track about 150 to 250 books per week in that auction. I price them out, and then as they go up for auction, as they sell, I pick out 5 books that surprised me on the high end and 5 books that surprised me on the low end. I think these are useful just because you can kind of see some of those big sales that are out there. You can see that there are still records being hit, but also those deals that are out there. So it just shows that if you're patient, you can also find those deals on these books too. And before we move on with this video, I just want to say, make sure to go check out Newbie Comics channel. Give him a subscribe because he is almost at that 3,000 number. He's going to be giving away a bunch of stuff when he hits 3,000 subscribers. So let's go try to get him out there. I'll put the link to his channel in the description of this video. So I've got 10 books I'm going to talk about, 5 on the high side, 5 on the low side. So let's get into those books. So the first one on here is a low sale. This is Marvel Spotlight number 5 with a CGC 9.4 that sold for $18,000. Now I realize $18,000 may seem like a huge amount of money because it is a huge amount of money, but for this book, for this first appearance of Ghost Rider, this is a big drop. Now there were a lot of these books that really spiked over the last year or so. I think largely driven by that 9/8 sale that happened last year that sold for like $264,000. Now the 9/8s are extremely rare. I believe at least at that time there were only 4 in that grade, and so that book just skyrocketed. It ended up being, it's actually the most expensive Bronze Age book that's ever sold. So that was a crazy sale back when that happened, but it had a side effect that it started to increase the prices of the lower grade copies as well. Now, I had estimated the price of this book, this 9.4, at $25,000. This was 28% below that estimate. And it had even peaked at $30,000 with multiple sales, one in March and January of this year, as well as one in November of last year. So it's not like there was one fluke sale up at $30,000. There were multiple sales up there, and this is a drop of 40% from that sale. So yeah, that was a pretty big drop. I've been seeing drops in this book kind of across the board, across most grades. I've been seeing this one come down. And I know this is a book that a lot of people have been looking for, and so it's probably a blessing in disguise, unless you're the person, obviously, that paid $30,000 for it, that this gives a chance for some people to pick up that first appearance of Ghost Rider. Now, this week, there were some other sales that also showed this downtrend with this book. There were 2 9/6s that sold as well in that Heritage Signature auction this week. One that went for $52,800 and one that went for $49,200. The one that went for a little more was a White Pages copy, but that's a book that had peaked in April at $90,000. That is a massive drop. I mean, almost $40,000 for the $52,000 sale and a little more than $40,000 for the other one. That's a big drop for that book. And this was a book that was $16,000 in 2020. I mean, to me, the $90,000, it was just, that book got way overheated. I think people just were too excited from that 9/8 sale, and it's coming back down to something that's maybe a little more reasonable because that was a jump of 400%, more than 400% for that book, which I think is just too much for anything that I've seen over the last year when you have these big spikes. If you have a book that went up 400, 500%, it's coming down pretty hard, so you got to watch for those. Now, this is a book that I definitely think you should be on the lookout for because it has been coming down. Now, I'm not saying go out and rush out and buy it right now, but definitely watch it since it is trending down right now. Now, honestly, I wouldn't really recommend an alternative for this book because the alternative you would normally say for Marvel Spotlight 5 is often Ghost Rider number 1, that first solo series for that character. But that's a book that's been consistently trending up. It's kind of a weird dichotomy with what's going on with the first appearance in that first solo series. So this is the book, Marvel Spotlight 5, that I would actually be looking for and just watch and see if prices come down and if there's a copy that presents well. That's one of the things I've really been talking about lately. Look for copies that present well right now. You can be picky on books as prices are coming down. All right, and now for number 9, speaking of Ghost Rider number 1, I've got Ghost Rider number 1, a CGC 9.4 that actually sold for a record $3,360. Now this is that first solo series for Ghost Rider, for that version of Ghost Rider. It's also the first cameo of the Son of Satan. I had estimated the price of this book at $2,600. This was 29% above my estimate. The prior record was $3,200 from just a few days before that, and this beat that record by 5%. But this book had been selling between around $2,200 and $2,700 for quite a few months, and so I wasn't sure if that recent $3,200 sale was a fluke or not. Clearly not, because we had this next sale that then beat that one. So, like I mentioned, this is a book that has generally been trending up across all grades. It's remained strong recently, and so it's not a book that I would probably really be picking up. To me, it's a risky time to be buying a book that is trending up, just because of what we're seeing across a lot of other books in the current comic market, that kind of thing. And so honestly, the alternative, it's strange, but I would be recommending, like I said, Marvel Spotlight number 5. I'd be going for that first appearance, just because that's a book that's been coming down and a book that might be getting to a more reasonable price again. All right, now number 8, we've got a low sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 1 with a CGC 0.5 that sold for $4,080. Now, this is one, we've got the second appearance of Spider-Man. His first appearance is in Amazing Fantasy 15. Also the first appearance of J. Jonah Jameson, first appearance of the Chameleon, first Fantastic Four crossover. So there's a lot going on with this book. It's the start of one of the longest series ever, so just a great key book. Now, this is a rough copy, don't get me wrong, but it's a 0.5. I mean, what do you want? It's a 0.5, but it is a complete 0.5. And I think that's a big deal when you're talking about 0.5s. It's not missing a centerfold, it's not missing some ad page, not missing the back cover. It's complete. It has those hole punches in it. It was probably in a binder or something like that. And so, to me, this is a pretty solid looking 0.5 complete book, because you don't have anything that's really impacting the main art on the cover. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $6,000. This was 32% below that estimate. The record was actually $7,000 from April, and there was a $6,500 sale in June. The $7,000 sale was actually my copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 1, which was also a complete copy. And so that's why I had priced this one relatively similar to that. But like I've talked about with Amazing Fantasy 15 recently, and a lot of the other Spider-Man books that got really overheated recently this year, they're starting to trend back down some. And so this is a time, again, if you're really looking for those Amazing Spider-Man keys, then I would be putting them on watch lists. I would start looking at those to see if they're going to come down to a price that you're comfortable with. Now, like I said, it's not a surprise that this book has been coming down some with just how much it had gone up previously, but regardless, I think this felt like a pretty good price. I mean, around $4,000 for a complete 0.5 of Amazing Spider-Man number 1 felt like a pretty good price to me. I think that person probably just got a pretty good deal. Now, this isn't really a book that you're going to have alternatives for. It's already kind of the alternative for Amazing Fantasy 15, but like I said, this is a time to start looking for those books. If this is a book, or Amazing Fantasy 15 is a book that you have within your budget. If you've got a large budget, then this is probably a decent time to start looking, because a lot of these books have been coming down. And these books, there was a lot of FOMO earlier this year as the prices were going up, that were really accelerating up, and so people were trying to get their copies, and you had a lot of really accelerated bidding. But now we're starting to see that cool off. Nothing can go up at those rates, regardless of how big of a key it is. And so we're starting to see those books come back down some. It is a book, Amazing Spider-Man 1, Amazing Fantasy 15. These are some huge keys. They are books that I expect to generally trend up over time, but right now they feel like they got a little overheated. They're coming down, and so that's really when you want to start looking again. All right, now number 7. This is a high sale. This is Spider-Woman number 1 with a CGC 9.8 that sold for $552. This is not her first appearance. Her first appearance is in Marvel Spotlight number 32, but this is her first solo title. I think it's a pretty cool cover. There's definitely been some talk about Spider-Woman coming to the movie universe, being a movie about her. I had estimated the price of this book at $385, so this was 43% above my estimate. Now, this is nowhere near the record. The record was actually $1,025, but when you go back and look at the history for this book, I'm not sure how much I trust those sales. They feel like they're really big outliers compared to what books have been going for around there. But even given that, it had a record of around $700 if you took those out last year. And so this was still a pretty solid sale, but this book had come down quite a bit. This is just showing maybe some return strength possibly, or just somebody really wanted to get a copy of this book. Now, it's very possible you could get this book a little cheaper on eBay at the moment. So just always be aware of that when you're in these auctions and bidding and you feel like maybe it's getting a little carried away. Just always make sure and go check out eBay, see what's going on there. But this is a book that you can find very affordably raw as well. You don't have to go out and get a 9.8. You don't have to spend $552 on it. You could play that game of trying to secure a really high-grade copy, do multiple submissions to CGC, see if you can get that high-grade book, or just keep it raw if you want. And personally, if I was going to be going after something for this character, I'd probably go for her first appearance in Marvel Spotlight 32. It's a cool cover. It's been coming down across almost all grades, and I just generally prefer to go for those first appearances versus the second appearance or first solo story or first solo series, just because that's generally going to be the first book that's going to move up if there is something that happens with that character. So that's the book I'd be targeting, Marvel Spotlight number 32. Mid-grades, you can find that book for around $200. All right, now number 6. This was a low sale. This was Tales to Astonish number 44 with a CGC 5.5 that sold for just $990. Now, there were a number of times where I wasn't really watching the auction and bidding, and this is one that I was a little upset that I missed out on. I would have liked to have put in some bids on this because this was just a steal for this book. This is a pretty tough book to find outside of just like about a 4.0. So a 5.5 is a nice condition copy for this book. And if you're not familiar, this is the first appearance of the Wasp. And outside of Tales to Astonish 27 and 35, this is really the biggest book of the run. I had estimated the price of this book at $1,500. This was 34% below that estimate, with the record sale being $1,680 from January, and in May, one sold for $1,600. So this is a drop of 41% from that peak price, and honestly, I think this is one where somebody just got a great deal on this book. I wish I would have been that person. So now this can be a pretty expensive book regardless of grade. It has a pretty high baseline value, and so a great alternative is the second appearance. It's just one issue later in Tales to Astonish number 45. She is still on the cover, and a mid-grade copy can be found for around $200 instead of around $1,000. All right, now number 5. This is a high sale. It's actually a book that I've been buying a couple copies of recently. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 78 with a CGC 9.6 selling for $2,640. This is the first appearance of the Prowler. This character gained a lot of popularity, publicity in the Spider-Verse Miles Morales animated movie. And like I said, I picked up a couple copies of this book recently. These late Silver Age sub 100 issues of Spider-Man, especially the key issues, I think are pretty great books to be picking up. I think that they are really undervalued. They seem too cheap for Spider-Man, especially when you've got a lot of people that just love Spider-Man, that like to collect those books, that like to put those runs together. I think that they are really good books to be picking up. Just the Spider-Man under 100, especially into the Silver Age. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,500. This was 76% above my estimate. The prior record was all the way back in 2020 for $1,784, but it had had a sale of $1,500 in 2021, so it also beat that record by 48%. And so that's what I'm talking about with this, that these later Silver Age Spider-Man keys, they've largely been ignored. I mean, $1,500 may sound like a lot, but that's 9.6 of Amazing Spider-Man 78. To me, that comes across as pretty cheap for a first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man run from the Silver Age. So I think these are starting to maybe get a little more attention now, and this one going for that $2,640. Now for alternatives, this book is relatively affordable in the lower to mid grades. You can still find it around $100 in those lower grades, but you could also go for issue 93, which is another great Prowler cover. Has a very similar look and feel to issue 78, and with that one, mid to upper mid grades can be found for around $100 to $150. So I don't think you can really go too wrong with either of those, just being those sub issue 100 copies of Amazing Spider-Man. All right, now number 4. This was a low sale. This was Daredevil number 1 with a CGC 7.0 that sold for $7,800. Now, this book doesn't need a lot of introduction. It is the first appearance of Matt Murdock as Daredevil, as well as a bunch of other characters. This book has had a wild last year or so. It spiked last year in the comic boom, was one of the earlier books that started spiking. Then it spiked again when we had the speculation about that character being in the Spider-Man movie. Then it fell kind of like everything else. Then it spiked again when we had this announcement of Daredevil likely coming back in a show on the MCU. So it's had a pretty wild year of ups and downs. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $13,000. This was 40% below that estimate. The record for this book back in March was $16,200, and it is down 52% from that peak sale. So this is definitely one of those books that I think got a little too hot last year, and it's just been trending down, recovering from that, because it is still up from where it used to be. This was a pretty affordable Silver Age key in the past, and it just got really, really expensive last year. So I don't think it's a bad book to buy. It is one of those higher tier Silver Age books, Silver Age first appearances, but it does seem like maybe it's starting to trend down and recover again a little bit from the peak prices that it had been at. Now, I don't really have an alternative for this book. You would often recommend the second appearance, which in this case is Daredevil number 2, but that's a book that's actually been very, very strong. Same thing with Daredevil number 7, another book that has been very strong recently. So right now, I would probably just be patient with Daredevil books. If you're looking to pick up some of those Daredevil keys, I think they are likely going to start trending down again, and I would just watch them and pick your time, pick your auction, pick the copy that works best for you. All right, now number 3. This is a super rare book. This is not a book you see very often. I think this is the first Golden Age book I'm talking about today. This is Silver Streak number 7 with a CGC 7.0 that sold for $20,400. This is a rare book. Like I said, I hardly ever see this book come up for sale. Only 31 universal copies on the census. This is not the Daredevil that we have from the Silver Age, from Marvel. It's also a cover appearance of the Claw. I had estimated the price of this book at $11,000. This was 85% above that estimate. The prior record from just 3 years ago, in 2019, was $4,750. This is a jump of 330% in just 3 years. These Golden Age keys, I've been talking about this, they have been extremely strong, and they have just retained value and kept trending up across all types of variety. I mean, this isn't really like a horror cover or anything like that. This is more of a superhero genre, but superheroes, pre-code horror, the pre-code sci-fi, the romance covers, just generally a lot of books in the Golden Age have been trending up and staying strong. Now, this is not a book that you have alternatives for. I mean, when you're talking about these early Silver Streak books, it doesn't matter which issue is. They do not come up often. You rarely see this title come up. But if you're interested in the Golden Age Daredevil, he did have his own run, and outside of a few issues, it's actually pretty affordable. A lot of them really aren't all that expensive, and so the Daredevil run, the Golden Age Daredevil run, can be a pretty affordable way to get into Golden Age books. But just remember, there's not a lot of demand for those books, so if you're looking to sell them, they can take a long time, but it can be something that at least gives you a foothold into the Golden Age if you're interested, where you've got some more affordable books. All right, now number 2, and I'm pretty surprised to see this one in this spot, actually. This is a low sale. This is Shazam number 28 with a CGC 9.4 that sold for just $660. This is probably the sale I regret the most about missing out on. This was a huge steal for this book. This book is tough to get in these higher grades. There aren't a lot of them out there, and man, whoever got this book, I just say congratulations, because you got a steal on this one. This is the second appearance of Black Adam, if you're not counting that alter ego number 7 from the Silver Age, which wasn't really officially part of the universe for this character. But this also shows the risk of speculating on DC properties, because we had the trailer for Black Adam, and then this book seems to be going down more. So I don't know really what that says about the trailer. The problem to me is that it kind of felt like generic superhero trailer. There wasn't really anything that really brought me into it, that made me really excited to see it. It looks like it'll be a fun movie, but it kind of feels like it's going to be every other Rock movie, but he's just superhero in this one. But we'll see how it turns out. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,300. This was 49% below that estimate. The record from November of last year was $2,150. This is a drop of 69% from that record. Now, like I said, I think this was a legitimate steal. Another copy sold a few days later for $1,000, but even with that, this is a book that is still trending down. So now, alternatives for this one, it's not really a book that I'd recommend an alternative for. I would say try to find a copy of this book. Just drop down in grade, get something maybe a little more affordable if it's a book that you want. I think it's a really cool cover. He's on the cover, you've got that cool blue background. It's a book that I do like, but if the movie does flop, this book will fall even further, no matter how big of a star The Rock is, so just be aware of that if you are looking at this book. Alright, so now for the most surprising high sale. Again, I've got this weird dichotomy here with this character. This was Marvel Family #1 with a CGC 2.5 that sold for a record $10,200. And so, like we had with Ghost Rider at the start of this video, now we've got this with Black Adam at the end of the video, because this is the first appearance of Black Adam. This is when he first appears in the Golden Age all the way back in 1945. And yeah, it's crazy. He doesn't officially appear again until 1977 in that copy of Shazam #28. Now, I have mentioned this in a few other videos before. I don't have too many regrets when it comes to books that I've passed on. Usually I'm pretty comfortable with it. I've gotten something else, it's okay. But passing on a 2.0 copy of this back in early 2021, definitely one of my big regrets. It would have been such a cool book to have. Definitely would have gone onto my keepers list. But at the time, I felt like it was a little too expensive. Now that book is double, triple what I would have paid back then. So that one stings a little bit. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $5,000. This was 104% above my estimate. The prior record was also $5,000, but it was from June of last year, kind of in the peak comic boom. And we've had some books generally trending down recently, especially when you're talking about Shazam 28, so I thought maybe this one also might not have that same strength, but this sale just crushed it. I mean, $10,200 compared to the prior record of $5,000, just crushed that sale. Now, to me, I think it is really strange that we're seeing this book reach new heights, but his second appearance in that Shazam 28 is taking a dive. What I think it could be is that there are a limited number of fans of this character, because he's not a huge character, he's a relatively obscure character. He does appear in some of the animated series stuff, but he is a relatively obscure character. And so maybe because of the limited number of fans, because there are a limited number of Golden Age books, there's enough fans to drive the prices of those. But with Shazam 28, maybe there aren't enough people that have that interest in that character to drive the prices of that book. That's a possibility. I don't know. That's just a little bit of my speculation. Now, the alternative, obviously, is Shazam #28, the book that I just showed in the last segment. Like I said, I do really like that cover. I think it's a cool second appearance, and it's a much more affordable book. Mid-grade's running around $350 to $400. It doesn't really go below $300 regardless of grade. It has a pretty strong baseline value, but like I said, depending on how that character does in the movie, if they decide they're going to continue using him moving forward, that's something where you could see that book get cheaper. Same thing with Marvel Family #1. I mean, it has gone up a lot. It used to be a really affordable book, and it's now gone up considerably for this character, for that first appearance of Black Adam. So it's something to be a little careful of, but when you're talking about these Golden Age keys, they do have a little more built-in strength behind them just because of the limited number of them that are out there. Alright, so that is the top 10 surprising sales I saw last week. Hope you enjoyed this video, saw some cool books, maybe learned something about the current sales, current market. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.